And joining me now is Assemblymember Daniel O'Donnell, who represents parts of Manhattan, including Manhattan Valley, Morningside Heights, and portions of the Upper West Side and West Harlem. And he's running for public advocate under the ballot line, Equality for All. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So before we get to your candidacy for public advocate, yes, you're a member of the Assembly, you've had a career before that. Talk a little bit about your resume and what you see as some of your biggest accomplishments.
Well, I'm a grandchild of immigrants, and my mother died when I was 12, cancer very quickly, and my father tried to drown his troubles in alcohol, so we were sort of left on our own and abandoned, and New York City saved my life, because in 1983 it opened up a law school that I could afford to go to, so I'm a proud graduate of CUNY Law School. When I got out of law school, I didn't go to work on Wall Street and make money. I became a public defender in Brooklyn, so for 7 years I served as a public defender in Brooklyn. And then when I left that, I had a private practice on the west side of Manhattan, which my husband refers to my not-for-profit law practice, because mostly I represented people for free. And then I joined Community Board 9 in Harlem for 7 years and fought overdevelopment. And then I got elected to the New York State Assembly, becoming the first openly gay man ever elected to that body. I joined Deborah Glick, my dear friend, and I went to work. And I passed the marriage equality law, I passed the Dignity for All Students Act, I passed the bill that allows interns to sue for sexual harassment. I did all those things while I was there, and additionally for 4 years I was corrections chair, and so I visited 38 state prisons over the course of 4 years, which is hard because they're very, very far away. And I'm now the criminal justice expert in the State Assembly, and I think I'm the most qualified person to be public advocate. All
right, so take us there. Why run for public advocate, and how do you think about the office of public advocate? What does it mean to you? Someone on the street says, I hear you're running for public advocate, but I don't really know what that office is. What do you say?
I get asked that every day now, just so you know, so it's not unique
not
to
that
you.
Hypothetical.
No. First of all, I'm running for public advocate because I'm not running for mayor, which is a very important thing. One of the problems with the office is the office has been used as a springboard to something else. I'm not using it as a springboard, and I think that's very important. Most of my colleagues running can't even answer honestly to that question. So I'm saying affirmatively, that's not why I'm doing it. Secondly, in this era of overreaching executive power, we need a check on the mayor's power. And that person needs to be independent from the mayor and independent from the governor. And I am independent from both of them. I also have never held a party position. I'm not a member of the DNC or a district leader or a state committeeman, so the party structure doesn't have any role in my life. And I think that's very important. I've done my job for the last 16 years with no outside income, which is a very important thing to point out, because the people who have gotten in trouble in Albany, often it's their outside income. I like to joke, I'm the only member of the state legislature ever to have his picture on the cover of the New York Times, not in handcuffs, because I passed the marriage equality law. And in the end, what you need is someone who's fierce, independent. I think it's better that that person be a lawyer and knows certain things. I've been a lawyer, and I have represented individual clients. And the one thing I'll point out is the Amazon letter. So we were all asked as elected officials by the mayor to sign a letter inviting Amazon to come to New York City. And I read the letter, and it had no details and no information, and it didn't say what it was going to cost or how it was going to work, and I refused to sign the letter. It was called 5 times by the mayor. When do you sign the letter? When do you sign the letter? So I didn't sign that letter. And now people are outraged at $3 billion giveaway to the largest company, and yet Melissa Mark Viverito, Michael Blake, and Jumaane Williams all signed the letter.
These are competitors in this race.
So if you don't have enough backbone to stand up to a little bit of pressure from the mayor, then you don't have enough backbone to be the public advocate. And being angry now that Amazon is coming after you sign that letter is like inviting someone to your wedding and then being pissed off when they show up.
So let's stick with that for a second. It's a key plank of how you're saying you show independence, and you would continue to do so. Is it a bad thing for Amazon to come to New York City, or is it only because of the subsidies involved?
It's not inherently a bad thing. But rather than go to a community and say, this is what we're going to do, why don't we go to the community and ask them what they want? I served on a community board for 7 years. All community boards have a 197A plan, which is a planning for what they want in the future. What is in that planning 197A document? Go to the community and say, what do you want and how do you want it to be? If you're going to bring in somebody who's going to build all of that, is it being built in a sustainable manner? It's on the waterfront. We have a climate crisis in this country. Is that the right thing to do? If they're coming in and they're going to bring all these people in, why don't we require them to put a new subway entrance or addition on a subway line for all the people they're bringing in? Are the people there, are they being paid a livable wage? What I hear from the ones who work in Staten Island, no, and that's a perfect example. They came to Staten Island and built a distribution center, and the distribution center has no public transport. Why didn't someone say, before you do that, you have to pay to extend the bus line so people can get to work? So you have to ask all these questions before. So I'm not inherently opposed to Amazon, although I don't use it, but I shop locally. And if you look at my filing, you'll see Janoff Supplies on Broadway at 113th Street, which is where I buy supplies for my campaign office. In the end, it's not about good or bad. It's about whether or not it's been done correctly, whether or not the community has been asked, whether or not sufficient infrastructure repairs are being made before you go and do that.
So I hear you saying that it's essential the next public advocate is someone with independence like that. But what does the public advocate's office look like under Danny O'Donnell? Is there a certain issue area focus? Is it like Tish James, where you have a focus on litigation and legislation? Are you having regular press conferences where you're calling out the mayor on things he said or didn't say or did or didn't do? What does it look like under your leadership?
I passed the Marriage Equality Act 5 years in a row. I didn't call a single press conference. Press conferences are more to feed the egos of electeds than they are to do anything else. So the first thing it has to do is legislate. So what will I do? The first piece of bill I'll introduce is a bill to give the public advocate subpoena powers. So they have the power to investigate. Why is that important? Well, as chair of the ethics committee, I was the person in charge of investigating Vito Lopez for sexual harassment. I conducted an investigation in 6 weeks in full compliance with EEOC guidelines and used subpoena power to get to the bottom. It was the first time a sitting state legislator was sanctioned for sexual harassment. If you think that was easy to do to a colleague, it was not. But I know what the power is of an investigation, so part of it will be investigation. The part of litigation I would agree with, except that I would, rather than use city employees to do that, I would call on law firms to represent things pro bono, so we're not paying for another set of lawyers for it. So that, I think, is very important. And the second thing is you need to see whether or not we're on track with what we're promising. There's a lot of slogans out there. This in 2030, this in 2050, this is 2017, green and white and great, whatever. So one of the first ones will be an AIDS task force, because the plan is that AIDS will end in 2020, and is New York City on track to do that? Have an employee who brings all the different treatment and service organizations together to talk about how that's going and see whether or not they're getting the adequate state, city, and federal funding to do their job. Another task force will be a hate crimes task force. There's a rise in anti-Semitism. I see it in my own neighborhood. There's a rise in gay bashings. We saw that just the other day. And bring together the groups that are working on those issues to talk to each other and say, is there a approach or is there a way the city can do a better job about that? That will be my approach. I don't know everything, but there are people out in the city who do know an awful lot. And if you ask them to come in and talk with each other, you may learn a lot.
I want to come back to that in a second, but you brought up Vito Lopez and your time in the Assembly and ethics. Looking back at that, is there anything you would have done differently during the period of time involving the Lopez allegations and incidents and Shelley Silver? Is there anything you wish had gone differently?
Let me be very clear. The day I got the allegation, the two women came forward on a particular day, the investigation started. I did not realize to the end of the investigation what had gone on before. I knew nothing about that. The settlements that existed had nothing to do with me, and I believe that Shelley was wrong to do that. They should have allowed that process to go forward. Now, I was, for a time, a lawyer, an employment discrimination lawyer, and so I do understand what the difficulty is, but the reality is that my role was the moment I was given this, I conducted the investigation, I used the subpoena power to learn. What did I learn from that? About the previous settlements. And that information, when presented to the Ethics Committee, was the straw that broke the camel's back, in that there was no question that we had to find the most serious sanctions. And it's the first time a member has ever been censured. And you know, he was one of the most powerful Democrats in the state. And I was unafraid to do the right thing.
Okay, let's come back to the city.
Okay.
Are there issues, you mentioned a couple that you would form task forces on, AIDS, hate crimes.
Right.
are there issues facing the city right now? What's your assessment? You know, the mayor has been obviously in power now for 5 years and into his 6th year now. Are there issues that have been neglected? Are there problematic directions that the city's going on certain topics that as public advocate you would come in and you would say, hold on, we need to rethink this, or I'm going to investigate this, or here's the policy we should be pursuing, Bill de Blasio, you're way off on X?
The problem with the mayor is he's increasingly distant. He's spending time in Brooklyn, Ohio, and the governor's going to Manhattan, Kansas, and not focusing on the city of New York. There are many things, for example, the MTA is an example. Most of my colleagues who are running claim they're going to fix the MTA, but there's no budgetary power in the public advocate's job. There's a budgetary power when you're the Speaker of the City Council, but there's no budgetary power as a public advocate. I wrote the bill in Albany to create a millionaire's tax, to give $3 billion a year to the MTA's dedicated revenue source, and that's the only way to do that. Without a dedicated revenue source, the governor will simply steal it when times are tough. I've lived through those. So
that's an area of agreement with the mayor, by the way.
Okay, but in the end, the governor and the mayor spend more time fighting with each other than cooperating with each other to try to solve the problems. So the MTA is one big one. I would certainly agree with some of my colleagues who are running who think the public advocate should have a seat on the MTA board. Additionally, the crisis in NYCHA is mind-numbing, and nothing has been done. And we are putting Band-Aids on a hemorrhaging patient. We need to change the way we approach this and do it from a much more macro level. So, for example, all of the roofs in all of those places are beyond their life expectancy. So that creates issues with leaks and mold and blah, blah, blah. So what we need to do is fix all the roofs, fix all the boilers, fix all the elevators. Pick one. I don't care. Pick one. And start in the furthest reaches of Queens, which is where I was just a few moments before I saw you. And start replacing the roofs. And when you get to the Bronx, to the tip of the Bronx, turn around and do the next thing. Okay, now all those roofs are fixed. What's next? The boilers. Boom, 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 boom.
So you need money to do that.
You need money to do that. And the city and the state have been remiss, but I never ran the state assembly, so I'm in no position to do that. I'm one person and I advocate for it, and I'll tell you a story. We were given each $1 million per project by the governor and the speaker. And I thought, great, this is great. I went to one of them, and one of the tenants association said, we want doors. What did I get for $1 million? 2 doors. 2. They had to be smart doors. Did you know doors were dumb? I didn't know there were dumb doors. So in the end, there's a lot of places where there's rank problems in terms of the way it's being done, but no one is trying to systematically fix it. And that is what I think it needs to be done.
And just to follow on that for another second, the mayor has a new plan he outlined in December to bring in more revenue for NYCHA, but it involves the controversial practice of building new housing on underused NYCHA land. Some market rate, some affordable housing. Where are you at on that? Is that something as public advocate you would be behind? Would you be monitoring it? Not your concern.
It mostly seems like bullet points to me and not reality. The devil's in the details. Are there land that the city has that the city can build upon to fix the homeless crisis and to fix NYCHA? We could talk about that. But, you know, there's a problem in Elizabeth Street Garden, where there's a garden where they want to build affordable housing, where there's another affordable housing site around the corner that would build twice as many affordable housing sites. Why would you get rid of the garden when you could go somewhere else? So I think you need to look carefully at what that is. Obviously, if you're going to build on a particular development's land, the money that comes from that build has to go to that development. Mm-hmm. If it goes back into the whole NYCHA budget process, you will never see it. So the people who are going to be inconvenienced by the construction and have some of their light and air reduced, if that's what they're going to do, we have to make sure that those monies are tied directly to improvements in that individual place.
So let's zoom out from there more broadly than NYCHA to development, affordable housing across the city. As public advocate, some people might be looking to you to have something to say about the mayor's plan to rezone more neighborhoods, upzoning, more density, what community development funding comes with that. Where are you on that? Do you think there should be a massive building program across the city to alleviate the housing crisis, or what's your belief on that?
I believe the mayor is entirely wrong in his approach. We should not be upzoning, we should be downzoning. If you downzone, then somebody who wants to build bigger than they're allowed has to get permission. So if a builder comes to a community board, if you came to my community board and said, I'm going to build a 22-story building, but it's only allowed to be 12 stories, but half of it's affordable housing, do you know what we would say? We most likely would have said yes. But what upzoning does allows them to build as of right. And so I fought overdevelopment, I fought for historic districts. We need to change the zoning. The zoning laws in the city of New York are as old as I am, which is old, and we need to change that. And so there are all these ridiculous little things like the community facilities exception. The community facilities exception allows a builder to build bigger because something in it benefits the community. So all of Columbia University's buildings are community facilities. They're locked. I can't go in them. You can't go in them. So in the end, we have to rethink that. I think that the community board should have ULURP-like approval over the use of the community facility exception. If you go to a community and say, I'm building a new public school, they're going to say that's a community facility, right? But you're going to build something that's locked to the community, that's not really a community facility. And I think that if we do that, if we actually reduce what's permitted as of right, we have more leverage and bargaining power when people are building to do what we need to be done, which is create affordable housing.
So we're in our final minute here, unfortunately, so quickly. You started off by saying you should be public advocate in part because you're not running for mayor. And
correct.
Some of your competitors clearly have their eye on winning this race, staying in the public advocate's office, and then running for mayor. So what does that mean? You win the special election, you win in the fall, and then you win successive elections to remain public advocate for the next, you could basically be a public advocate for about 10 years. Is that the goal for you?
That will require permission from my husband to do that. But I mean what I say, and I say what I mean. And I am not using this to run for Congress, for Senate, for governor, or for mayor. I'm not. I'm running to do this job. And let me add one more thing. We've changed the election laws in New York, so now the primary is in June, which means petitioning to run in that primary is the same day as the election. Let me say this very clearly. If I do not win, I am not running in the primary in June. One of the greatest problems we have is narcissism among elected officials. I am not a narcissist. What a narcissist thinks is only I can do this job. So whoever wins, man or woman, may they be the best they can be, I intend to give them a chance to do that job before I criticize them and say you're not doing it correctly. I would challenge you to ask them, because I can tell you almost all of them are going to say they're running in June one way or the other, and I think that's wrong.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there. Assemblymember Danny O'Donnell, thanks for joining.
My pleasure. Thank you.